It began in whispers, behind cathedral walls, in the dim-lit confessionals where secrets were pried from trembling lips. The Spanish Inquisition, one of history's most notorious engines of fear, did not emerge suddenly in 1478. It was the culmination of centuries of religious anxiety, political ambition, and the obsessive desire for unity under a single faith. Its flames were fed by monarchs who feared division and clerics who saw heresy in every shadow. As historian Henry Kamen notes, the Inquisition was not merely a court, it was a mirror of a society terrified of itself. To understand its birth, one must first step into Spain in the late 15th century, a land fractured yet ambitious. Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile, the Catholic monarchs, had just united their crowns. Their marriage in 1469 set the stage for the final push to expel Muslim rule from the Iberian Peninsula, culminating in the fall of Granada in 1492. But victory in the Reconquista brought its own complications. Muslims and Jews who had lived under Christian rule for generations, often integrated into society, were now viewed with suspicion. Thousands of Jews had converted to Christianity, some sincerely, others under duress. These conversos, as they were called, became targets of a growing paranoia. The Inquisition's stated purpose was to root out heresy, but it was as much about control as belief. Established with papal approval from Pope Sixtus IV, it was unique in Europe for being a royal institution rather than a papal one, answering directly to the crown. This gave Ferdinand and Isabella unprecedented authority over religious matters, a tool to solidify their power. Historian Edward Peters remarks, "In Spain, the Inquisition became not just a tribunal of faith, but an arm of royal policy." What followed was a machinery of investigation unlike anything in medieval Europe. Suspects were rarely told the names of their accusers. Families were torn apart when a neighbor's whispered rumor became formal accusation. Trials were secret, and the accused might languish for months in dank, airless cells before even hearing the charges. Torture, though not unique to the Inquisition, was sanctioned to extract confessions, its methods grim but deliberate. The strappado hoisted prisoners by the wrists, tied behind their backs until shoulders dislocated. The water cure forced liquid down the throat until the stomach swelled to agony. The logic, chillingly explained by contemporary clerics, was that the salvation of a soul outweighed the suffering of the body. One of the Inquisition's most distinctive and theatrical punishments was the auto da fe, the act of faith. These public ceremonies, often held in grand plazas, were a blend of religious service, civic spectacle, and judicial sentence. The condemned, dressed in yellow penitential robes painted with flames and demons, would be paraded before crowds. Those who repented were given penances. Those who did not were handed to secular authorities for execution, most often by burning at the stake. In Seville, an auto da fe in 1559 drew thousands of spectators, including the royal court, to witness the purification of heretics. Yet it is a mistake to imagine the Inquisition as an unceasing bloodbath. Modern scholarship has tempered the older image of endless mass burnings. While thousands suffered imprisonment, property confiscation, and social ruin, the number of executions was likely in the thousands over 3 centuries, not the hundreds of thousands often claimed in Protestant propaganda. Still, the psychological impact was immense. Fear of denunciation silenced dissent, stifled intellectual freedom, and ensured religious conformity in a way that no mere sermon could. Its reach extended beyond religious minorities. As decades passed, the Inquisition's attention turned to mystics, Protestant reformers, and even Catholic clergy accused of unorthodox visions or personal ambition. In 1592, the brilliant but controversial mystic Fray Luis de León was arrested for translating the Song of Songs into Spanish, an act considered dangerous because it placed sacred scripture into the hands of common people. Scholar Gustav Henningsen calls the Inquisition a theater of control, in which not only religious purity, but cultural boundaries were policed. By the 17th century, The Inquisition's influence was waning, though it persisted as a feared institution. Spain's empire was in decline, and the great fervor of its early years had given way to bureaucratic routine. Still, its shadow extended into the colonies, with tribunals established in Mexico City, Lima, and Cartagena, adapting the same methods to the New World. Here, the Inquisition targeted not only heresy, but also indigenous religious practices, blending European anxieties with colonial domination. Perhaps the most haunting legacy of the Inquisition lies not in its death toll, but in the culture of fear it cultivated. It was a fear that drove people to police their neighbors, to guard their speech, to teach their children the importance of public orthodoxy over private belief. The Inquisition, writes historian Henry Charles Lear, was not merely a tribunal, it was an education in suspicion. Even after its formal abolition in 1834, the psychological scars lingered. Today, the Inquisition is often invoked as a cautionary tale about intolerance, about the dangers of allowing religious or ideological purity to override human compassion. Its history is both more complex and more human than the caricatures of black-robed fanatics would suggest. It was made possible not just by kings and priests, but by the everyday fears, ambitions, and silences of ordinary people. And that, perhaps, is its most enduring warning, that the machinery of persecution is never built solely by those in power. It is assembled piece by piece in the quiet complicities of those who believe they are protecting their world, until they find themselves standing in the plaza, watching the flames rise, unsure whether they are truly safe or merely next.